Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at Le Havre. It's a 1 to 5 player worker placement economic city building game where you take the role of a business owner in the port town of Le Havre. You are building, selling, and collecting resources, trying to become the most successful business person in Le Havre. How do you become the most successful business person and win the game? After a specified number of rounds based on the number of players, whoever has the most money or value, including buildings, is the most successful business person and wins the game. Now that we know what the winning condition is, let's take a look at the components, setup, and how a turn and round work in Le Havre. Now let's take a look at the components for Le Havre. We're going to start with the 3 main game boards. Then we're going to look at our tokens. At the top left, you see your franc tokens. And then going across the top, you have your cattle or meat token, your grain or bread token, iron or steel, clay or brick, wood or charcoal, fish or smoked fish, coal or coke, and finally hide or leather. Then in the second row, you have your food production, round supply tokens, and the starting player token. Now let's look at the cards. You have your round overview cards, your starting building cards, your round cards, your standard building cards. These are the ones that have the check marks on the back. Your special building cards, these are the ones with the anchors. Your loan cards. And then finally we have our player components. You have your game turn card, your ship, and disc in each of the 5 player colors. Now let's look at the setup for Le Havre. We're going to be setting this up for a 3-player game, and setup takes 14 steps. Step 1, create your main game board in the center of the playing area. Step number 2 is to take your player components, which is your ship, your disc, and your game turn card. Step number 3 is to shuffle and place your round supply tiles on the main game board. Step number 4 is to stack goods and food pools on the main game board. Step number 5 is to place the starting offers, and you'll notice the number that you place is underneath those offer locations. It says start and then how many of those tokens you place in the offer location. Step number 6, you're going to give starting resources to each player. You're going to give 5 franc and 1 coal. Step number 7, you are going to shuffle your special building deck, and then you are going to draw 6 to place face down in the special building location on the main game board. Step number 8, you're going to place the starting buildings. Step number 9, you're going to sort, shuffle, and stack your standard buildings. The rules for this are located on the bottom of each of the standard building cards. First, you're going to remove cards that do not have check marks with the number of players you're using. So, in a 3-player game, we would remove the card you see here. Then you're going to shuffle them and place them in 3 equal piles. Then you're going to flip the cards over and sort them by number, smallest on top, and then stack them on your building proposal locations. Step number 10, you're going to sort and stack your round cards. So you're going to find the round cards that have your player count on them, and then stack them by the round number you see in the circular location. So what card you see here for 3 players is the second round. So once you've stacked them with the number of players that you have and the first round on top, you place that in your round card location on the main game board. Step number 11, you are going to stack your loan cards. Step number 12, you're going to place your round overview card. Step number 13, you're going to place your food production pool. And finally, step number 14 is to determine the starting player. Now let's take a look at how a round and turn work in Le Havre. A game consists of rounds based on the number of players you have and if you're playing the full game or the shortened game. Each round consists of 7 individual turns. A turn has 2 mandatory actions, and then 3 additional actions can be taken. The first is the supply action, so you're going to place your ship on the next round supply location. So at the beginning of the game, you would flip over the first location and then place your ship. After you've placed your ship, you're going to place the 2 goods that are located on the round supply token on their 2 offer locations. So in this case, you would place a wood in the wood offer and cattle in the cattle offer. Now, so this time I do want to point out that one of these round supply tiles has interest written on the tile, and on that particular supply action, anyone that has a loan or multiple loans will pay 1 franc back to the treasury. After you've supplied your offers based on the round supply token, you are then going to take a main action. This is where you can either take all the goods from one particular offer location or move your person disc to an unoccupied building. When entering a building, you check the entry fee if it's the town building or another player's, and you would pay that fee. So in this case, you would pay 2 food back to the town. If you do not have 2 food, you can pay 2 franc to replace the 2 food that you need to pay to enter this building. If it was another player's, you would pay that fee to that player. There are 3 types of additional actions. You can buy buildings, which means you can buy any of the public buildings that they have in the town, or any of the top 3 buildings from your 3 buildings stack. You can also buy ships. Ships will be starting to pop up on the right side of the game board after the rounds, and you can buy the top ship of each stack. When buying any of these buildings, you're going to pay the top left cost. So buying this building would cost 8. Next, you can sell buildings. You can place it back into the public building location and gain half the value of that particular building in francs. And the last additional action is to repay a loan. You would pay 5 francs to repay 1 loan. Now let's take a look at the loan card. For the loan card, you can take 4 francs, but when you pay it back, you have to pay 5 francs, and then during the interest supply action, you would pay 1 franc back to the treasury. And then at the end of the game, these are -7 in value. After there have been 7 individual turns, we reach the end of the round. At the end of the round, there are 4 phases to go through, and those phases are located on the round card. The first is the harvest. So you check to see if there's a harvest at the top of the round card. If there is, then any player that has 1 grain would gain another grain, and any player that has 2 cattle would gain 1 more cattle. The second phase at the end of the round is the feeding phase, where you pay the number of food located in the number of players that are playing box. So in this case, you look at the 3-player box and you would pay 2 food. Remember, if you cannot pay the amount in food, you can pay that in francs. If you don't have the money to pay, you would then take out a loan. The third phase is town construction. If there's a card symbol on the round card next to the number of players, then you would place that particular building in the public buildings. So if it was just a regular card symbol, then you would take the lowest number from the top of the 3 stacks and place it in the public buildings. If it had an anchor, you would take the top special building and place it in your public buildings. This information is also located on your round overview card. So in a 3-player game, the first building is placed at the end of round 3, and the first special building is placed at the end of round 4. And then the 4th phase at the end of the round is the ship card. After you're finished, you're going to flip over the round card, And there is a ship. You place it in its location on the main game board. As soon as you start purchasing ships, you are going to use your food production tokens to keep track of how much food you are producing with your ships. Rounds will continue until the final end of round card is resolved, and then we would enter the final stage. In the final stage, each player takes one final main action. This is the only time that you are allowed to use occupied buildings. Then you're going to count each player's value, their buildings and ships, and their cash. And then you are going to subtract 7 for each of their loans. Then the player with the most value at the end of the final stage is the most successful business person in Le Havre and wins the game.